Surviving Afghanistan. Imagine being surrounded by armed men in the middle of nowhere, with no way out. This is the story of how I survived one of the most dangerous places on Earth, Afghanistan. Would you risk your life to explore a country torn by war? I did, and what happened next still gives me chills. I went to Afghanistan for adventure, but I ended up fighting for my life. This is the story I'll never forget. The moment I landed in Kabul, I knew this wasn't going to be a normal trip. Armed guards, high walls, and an atmosphere so tense it felt like the city was holding its breath. My guide, Farid, met me at the airport, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. "Stay close," he said, "and don't take out your camera unless I say it's safe." We drove through Kabul in an old Toyota Corolla, the streets a mix of chaos and eerie silence. Bullet holes pockmarked the walls, and armed checkpoints were everywhere. This was a city still at war, and I was just a tourist walking into the unknown. That night, I stayed in a small guest house in the city center. The owner, an elderly man, seemed nervous, his eyes darting to the door every few minutes. "You'll be safe here," he said, but his voice didn't convince me. As I lay in bed, distant gunfire echoed through the streets, and the occasional siren sent my heart racing. Sleep was impossible. I was already questioning my decision to come here. The next day, Farid and I set out for Bamiyan, home to the ancient Buddhas destroyed by the Taliban. The drive was breathtaking, but terrifying, winding mountain roads, with sheer cliffs on one side and deep valleys on the other. Farid warned me to keep my camera hidden. "Some groups don't like foreigners," he said. "If they see you filming, it could get ugly." About an hour outside, Bamiyan armed men appeared out of nowhere, blocking the road. Farid slammed on the brakes, and my heart stopped. They surrounded the car, shouting in Pashto and pointing rifles at us. One of them yanked open my door and dragged me out. I thought it was over, I was going to die in the middle of nowhere. But then, Farid shouted something in Pashto, and the men hesitated. After a tense exchange, they let us go. Farid didn't say a word as we drove away, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. We made it back to Kabul, but I was a different person. That moment of terror changed everything. I had come to Afghanistan seeking adventure, but I left with a newfound respect for the fragility of life and the resilience of the people who call this place home. This journey taught me that sometimes the most profound experiences come with the greatest risks. But it also reminded me that there is a fine line between bravery and recklessness. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments, would you ever visit a place like Afghanistan? My scariest journey. Surviving Afghanistan. Imagine being surrounded by armed men in the middle of nowhere, with no way out.